Welcome to another episode of True Crime Documentaries. In this episode, we take a look at the most disturbing interviews of different serial killers. Please like, comment, and subscribe.
The first two, which were very messy, it was a shock that first time. That horrified me. I did everything stupid, everything wrong. If I were trying to get away with it, it was just really, really dumb.
And what were you feeling as you did that?
Very stimulated, very provoked, what is your passion in your life? You know, what is the thing that you like to do more than anything else? And you're doing it.
Why do you want to be executed?
I have to be. Because I will kill again.
Do you have any comprehension of the suffering that you've brought the families of the people that you killed?
I don't have any remorse.
These are some of the most dangerous killers who ever lived. Get ready as we delve into the darkest corners of the human psyche. In this video of disturbing interviews with serial killers, we explore the twisted minds of some of the most notorious murderers in history. Brace yourself for a journey into the depths of depravity as we uncover the shocking confessions and disturbing revelations from these cold-blooded killers. Jeffrey Dahmer.
And that's why you killed them?
Right. Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
First, we will delve into the twisted mind of one of the most infamous murderers in history, Jeffrey Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal. As the interview begins, we are immediately struck by Dahmer's intelligence and articulation. Dahmer starts by revealing the obsessive desires and thoughts that consumed him. He explains that he was driven by an insatiable need to control and possess his victims permanently. In an attempt to understand his actions, Dahmer also admits that he still feels the old compulsions and urges.
Do you still feel those same urges? Do you still feel that compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
It is clear that Dahmer's disturbing behavior began long before his killing spree. He had a history of arrests for indecent exposure, disorderly conduct, and even fondling a 13-year-old boy.
It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you depersonalize another person and view them as just an object for pleasure instead of a living, breathing human being.
In 1978, at the age of 18, Dahmer committed his first murder. His victim was Stephen Hicks, a hitchhiker whom Dahmer lured to his parents' home under the guise of offering him a place to stay. Dahmer's method of murder would become a chilling pattern. He would lure his victims, often young men, to his apartment or hotel room, promising them money or a place to stay. Once there, he would drug them, rendering them helpless and vulnerable to his sadistic desires.
When you killed these men, afterwards, were you repulsed? Were you upset?
No, at the time, it was almost addictive. It was almost a surge of energy.
After killing his victims, Dahmer would engage in acts of necrophilia. He would violate their lifeless bodies, indulging in his darkest fantasies. But Dahmer's depravity didn't end there. Dahmer admits to photographing his victims, capturing their appearance and physical beauty.
It was my way of remembering their appearance, their physical beauty. I also wanted to keep something. If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
It wasn't until July 22nd, 1991, that Dahmer's reign of terror would end. One of his intended victims, Tracy Edwards, managed to escape from Dahmer's clutches. Edwards flagged down 2 police officers, leading them to Dahmer's apartment. What they discovered inside was a house of horrors. Dahmer was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. He was convicted of 15 of the 16 homicides he committed in Wisconsin and sentenced to life imprisonment. The judge handed down a staggering total of 957 years in prison. But Dahmer's story doesn't end there. In November 1994, just 2 years into his sentence, he met a gruesome fate. He was beaten to death by a fellow inmate, Christopher Scarver, in the Columbia Correctional Institution. Richard Ramirez.
Admit to being evil, Richard?
We are all evil in some form or another, are we not?
I'm asking you the questions, my friend.
Yes, I am evil. Not 100%, but I am evil.
Born on February 29, 1960, Richard Ramirez's childhood was marred by a series of disturbing events that would shape his dark path. Growing up in a poverty-stricken neighborhood, Ramirez was exposed to a harsh reality from an early age.
A serial killer comes about by circumstances and like a recipe: poverty, drugs, child abuse. These things, you know, contribute to a person, to a person's frustration and anger.
Ramirez's criminal tendencies began to manifest during his teenage years. He started stealing and engaging in petty crimes, giving a glimpse into the darkness that lay within him. As Richard Ramirez's dark desires consumed him, he embarked on a reign of terror that would grip Los Angeles in fear. From June 1984 to August 1985, Ramirez unleashed a series of sadistic and brutal killings that shocked even the most seasoned detectives. Strangulation, beating, and sexual assault were just a few of the sadistic acts Ramirez committed. Ramirez's motive for killing was simply to kill. He was a predator driven by a dark and insatiable urge to inflict pain and death due to his frustration.
To a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, he explodes.
Richard Ramirez's reign of terror eventually came to an end when he was captured by a group of residents who recognized him and handed him over to the police. What followed was one of America's most notorious courtroom dramas. As the trial unfolded, shocking details emerged about Ramirez's fascination with Satanism. Ramirez, however, claimed the world had been fed lies about him.
What do you want the world to know about you?
The world has been fed many lies about me. I have read very few truths.
Despite his conviction, Ramirez showed no concern for his own fate. He made it clear that he did not care about himself or the consequences of his actions.
Why on earth would you have hurt those people? Why did you kill those people?
No comments. No comments. I cannot answer that at this time.
At some point, he even tried to compare his act to that of the government. In the end, Ramirez was sentenced to death in California's gas chamber, and he died while still on death row. Aileen Wuornos.
All they were was shot and left. If it was a horrendous crime, why didn't I shoot them between the eyes, cut their penis off, stick it in their mouth, do all kinds of gross stuff? All they were was shot and left.
Next, we bring you face to face with Aileen Wuornos, one of the most fearsome female serial killers in history. From a young age, Wuornos experienced a troubled upbringing, marked by abuse and abandonment that would shape her into the person she would become.
I hate those male... God. I hate those male cops. Real bad, because they're dirtballs. The cops, the judges, the lawyers, they're all male.
By the time Aileen reached her teenage years, she had become a rebellious and troubled young woman. She ran away from foster homes, seeking solace in the streets. It was during this time that she turned to prostitution as a means of survival. As Aileen Wuornos descended further into the depths of her troubled psyche, the dark woods of Florida's highways became the setting for her chilling killing spree. The unsuspecting men who crossed her path would soon become victims of her twisted rage. It was during this killing spree that Aileen met Tyria Moore, a woman who would become her lover and partner in crime. It was Tyria who would ultimately betray her to the police, eliciting a confession that would unravel the horrifying truth. In the end, Aileen Wuornos was arrested and tried.
Maybe you were just born bad.
Boy, I don't know about you. I'm telling you, man. No, I wasn't born bad. You guys got it. See, I'm trying to tell you, man, they lied. They lied so bad to you all.
She pleaded no contest to the murder charges, accepting her fate. She was sentenced to death, choosing death by lethal injection over life in prison. Her last interview was even more disturbing, as she claimed the police just wanted to paint her as a serial killer. She also talked about how the government tortured her with sonic sounds in her head. Just before the interview ended, Aileen blamed the government and society for what had happened to her.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I lost my fucking life because of it. Couldn't even get a fair trial. Couldn't even get a fair investigation or nothing. Couldn't even have my appeals right. You sabotaged my ass, society, and the cops, and the system. A raped woman got executed.
Wesley Allen Dodd.
Why do you want to be executed? I have to be.
is I will kill again.
Wesley Allen Dodd was born on July 3, 1961, in Toppenish, Washington. At first glance, his childhood seemed ordinary, but behind closed doors, a different reality unfolded. Dodd claimed that he was never abused or neglected as a child, but his diary, written during his imprisonment, revealed a different story. In those pages, he detailed the emotional and physical abuse he suffered at the hands of his father. By the age of 9, he discovered a disturbing truth about himself. He was sexually attracted to other boys. This realization would set the stage for the horrifying acts that would later define his life. Dodd's criminal history began when he was just 13 years old.
No, I would do it again. I've been molesting kids nonstop since I was 13 years old, over half my life. Anything happened, I can guarantee I'd do it again, and sooner or later I would kill another child.
In a series of chilling acts, Dodd sexually assaulted and murdered 2 brothers, Cole and William Neer. The depths of his depravity knew no bounds, as he later abducted and killed 4-year-old Lee Iserly. These innocent lives were brutally taken, leaving a community in shock and mourning. Dodd's crimes were not impulsive acts of violence. They were meticulously planned and executed, as revealed in his diary, where he documented his crimes and even planned future abductions. Dodd claimed to have liked killing.
I've done it before, and at the time I liked it.
But Dodd's reign of terror would soon come to an end. He was arrested after a failed attempt to abduct another child from a movie theater restroom. He was found guilty of the murder charges against him and was sentenced to death. However, the story doesn't end there. Dodd chose to be executed by hanging, the very same method he used to end the life of Lee Iserly. Despite his conviction, Dodd in an interview said if he was ever free, he still had someone he'd like to kill.
I'm not going to say who, but there is somebody out there. There's a man out there.
There's a man.
Yeah.
Someone related to the case that got you imprisoned in the first place?
Not directly, no.
The interviewer decided to probe further.
But it's something that you know that you're going to do, or you plan to do, you want to do.
Yeah.
Dodd also talked about why his execution would be a good thing. When asked how he lived with himself after killing 3 innocent boys, Dude said he felt guilty but tried not to think about it. Finally, Dodd expressed his full desire to die because it meant relief for him and was the only way to guarantee he wouldn't hurt anyone. Eventually, Dodd was executed by hanging on January 5th, 1993. Ted Bundy.
I don't want to die. I'm not going to kid you. Okay, kid you not. I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment society has, and I think society deserves to be protected from me.
Those are the words of Theodore Bundy, one of the most prolific serial killers in America's history. Bundy's childhood home was filled with love and stability. His grandparents, Samuel and Eleanor Cowell, played an active role in his upbringing, providing additional support and guidance. As Bundy entered his teenage years, he began to show signs of rebellion and a growing fascination with violence. In his interview, Bundy emphasizes the significant influence of violent pornography on individuals like him. He believes that exposure to explicit and graphic material played a pivotal role in the development of his violent tendencies.
We're talking about an influence that is the influence of violent types of media and violent pornography, which was an indispensable link in the chain of behavior, the chain of events that led to the behaviors, to the assaults, to the murders, and what happened.
Over time, Bundy would go on to commit over 30 murders, yet he claimed he was innocent when he was newly apprehended.
Felt like when you were extradited, you issued a statement saying you feel that everything will turn out all right, that you are innocent. Do you still feel that?
Yeah, more than ever.
He even stated that he was angry at being locked up for a crime he didn't commit.
Sure, I get angry. Very, very angry and indignant. I don't like being locked up for something I didn't do, and I don't like my liberty taken away, and I don't like being treated like an animal, and I don't like people walking around and ogling me like I'm some sort of weirdo, because I'm not.
However, he eventually admitted to the murder, and right before he was executed, Bundy in his last interview said while he deserved to die, it didn't change what had happened.
Because there is no way in the world that killing me is going to restore those beautiful children to their parents and correct and soothe the pain.
Ted Bundy was eventually executed in the Rayford electric chair on January 28, 1989. His last words were, "I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." Carol Edward Cole.
Why not fight for your life?
I just don't care to.
Carroll Edward Cole was born in Sioux City, Iowa on May 9, 1938. From the very beginning, his life was marred by turmoil and emotional abuse. His mother, a deeply troubled woman, inflicted unimaginable pain on young Carroll. At the tender age of 8, Carroll Cole drowned a classmate, a chilling act that sent shockwaves through the community. As Carroll grew older, his violent tendencies escalated. Carroll's violent urges landed him in various mental hospitals, where he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. But despite this diagnosis, he was released back into society, a decision that would have devastating consequences. The true extent of Carroll's depravity was revealed when he attempted to strangle an 11-year-old girl, leaving her traumatized and scarred for life. This heinous act resulted in a 5-year prison sentence, but it was a punishment that did little to alleviate Carroll's guilt. After his release from prison, Carroll relocated to Nevada, where he continued his reign of terror. He targeted women, often choosing those he believed to be unfaithful. Carroll's reign of terror came to an end when he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison in Texas. But justice wasn't finished with him yet. In 1984, he was extradited to Nevada, where he faced trial for the strangulation deaths of 2 women. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was sentenced to death. In an exclusive television interview, he discussed the suffering he had inflicted upon his victims, expressing a twisted sense of remorse. He singled out an 11-year-old girl, a victim from 1967, as the source of his deepest guilt.
Are you sorry?
For the victim?
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone in particular?
Especially the one that was the 11-year-old girl way back in 1967.
The interview took a chilling turn when Carroll was asked about the possibility of pain during his impending execution, since it was the first time the state was using the lethal injection method.
If I said if I wasn't concerned about that, I'd be lying. Because everybody wants to go the, easiest, most comfortable way.
The ultimate question of whether Carroll believed he deserved to die hung in the air. Unable to answer directly, he acknowledged the gravity of his crimes and the magnitude of the ultimate punishment. Considering what he had done, he believed he deserved the fate that awaited him.
Do you deserve to die?
I can't answer that question.
Well, it's the ultimate question. It is the question.
For what I did, yes, I think I deserve to die.
On December 6, 1985, Carroll's execution was carried out by lethal injection, a method that would bring an end to his reign of terror. Gary Ray Bowles.
It's not hard to kill somebody. You can kill somebody pretty easy if you have the mindset for it.
It was the year 1994 when Gary Ray Bowles embarked on a chilling killing spree that would send shockwaves through the nation. It all started in the vibrant city of Daytona Beach, Florida, where Bowles met his first victim, John Roberts, at a local bar who offered him a place to stay. Little did Roberts know that this chance encounter would lead to his untimely demise. According to Bowles, an image showing on Roberts' TV triggered him into murdering the other man.
That video triggered a memory that I had blocked out of me being a little kid. The switch went on and that was it. And I just snapped.
7 weeks after the chilling murder of John Roberts, Gary Ray Bowles continued his reign of terror, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake.
I was on a real adrenaline high. From there on, it was just downhill rage.
This time, his sinister path led him to Savannah, Georgia, where he claimed his second victim, Milton Bradley, a World War II veteran. From there, Bowles would go on to murder 6 other men, earning him the nickname I-95 Killer, since most of his victims lived close to the Interstate 95 highway. When asked how he felt after killing his victims, Bowles had this to say.
I don't know, I felt all right, There's not really a way to describe it, it just, I guess, relief.
As the investigation intensified, the true extent of Bowles's depravity began to unravel. His modus operandi became clear, prostituting himself to his victims before unleashing his violent rage upon them. He would beat and strangle his victims, stealing their credit cards as a final act of dominance. For a long time, he managed to elude the authorities and was even added to the FBI's list of the country's 10 most wanted fugitives for his 4 known victims. He was finally arrested on November 22, 1994, and was found guilty of 3 counts of murder. Bowles was sentenced to death, and on August 22, 2019, he was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison in Rayford. Edmund Kemper.
I walked up to her bed. She's laying there reading a paperback, as many thousands of nights before. And she said, "Oh, I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now." Shit. And I looked at her, I said, "No." I said, "Good night." And I knew I was going to kill her.
Edmund Kemper, also known as the co-ed killer, had a troubled childhood that laid the foundation for his disturbing path. Born on December 18, 1948 in Burbank, California, Kemper's early years were marked by a tumultuous family life. His mother, Clarnell Kemper, was an alcoholic and possibly suffered from borderline personality disorder, which created a toxic environment for young Edmund. The troubled relationship between Kemper and his mother further fueled his violent tendencies.
My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her.
At the age of 15, Kemper's disturbed psyche took a sinister turn. On August 27, 1964, he murdered his grandparents, Maud and Edmund Kemper Sr., in their home. Kemper's motive for the killings remains unclear, but it is believed that his troubled relationship with his grandmother played a significant role. He went to a mental institution after being diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but was released 5 years later. With his newfound freedom, Kemper embarked on a murder spree that spanned over 20 years. His preferred victims were young female hitchhikers and college co-eds, whom he would pick up and lure into his vehicle with his seemingly harmless demeanor. His choice of victims was also heavily influenced by his hatred for his mother.
You were involved in the campus because your mother worked there?
Yes. I was also involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds, women, and had a very strong and violently outspoken position on men.
Once in his control, Kemper's true sadistic nature would emerge. He would rape, torture, and ultimately murder his victims, fulfilling his twisted fantasies. Kemper's ability to appear normal and non-threatening allowed him to gain the trust of his victims, making his crimes all the more horrifying.
I lived as an ordinary person most of my life, even though I was living a parallel and increasingly sick life, other life. One victim let me back in the car. I locked myself out. She opened the door for me.
During this reign of terror, Kemper would often dispose of the bodies in remote locations, burying some of the remains in his mother's garden and keeping some as souvenirs. It was only when Kemper reached a breaking point that he decided to turn himself in. Following a heated argument, Kemper decapitated his mother, finally killing her. After murdering his own mother, he felt that the killing had to stop. He was eventually tried, and having been found guilty of the charges against him, was sentenced to life imprisonment. Oscar Ray Bolin.
So you're saying you didn't murder these women? You didn't murder Natalie Hawley, Stephanie Collins, Terry Lynn Matthews?
No, I didn't know. I'd never seen them, never met them.
These are the words of convicted serial killer Oscar Ray Bolin. What makes them even more chilling is his persistent claims of innocence, even when the evidence against him was overwhelming, including the testimonies of 3 family members. Born on January 22, 1962, in Portland, Indiana, Bolin's early life was marred by a troubled childhood. He was subjected to physical and emotional abuse from his parents. As he grew older, his troubled upbringing manifested in a series of brushes with the law, foreshadowing the darkness that lay ahead. It was in Tampa, Florida, where Bolin's true nature would be unleashed. As a young adult, Bolin became a serial killer, targeting and brutally murdering young women. On January 25, 1986, the first murder attributed to Bolin sent shockwaves through the community. Natalie Blanche Hawley, a 25-year-old night manager at a local restaurant, was brutally stabbed to death. The brutality of the crime sent a chilling message to the residents of Tampa. A serial killer was on the loose. Months passed, and the body count continued to rise. Stephanie Collins and Terry Lynn Matthews, 2 more young women, fell victim to Bolin's insatiable bloodlust. Bolin's crimes remained unsolved for nearly 4 years, leaving the families of the victims desperate for answers and justice. The Tampa Bay area was gripped by fear as the elusive killer continued to evade capture. It wasn't until 1989 that a breakthrough came, thanks to a tip from the husband of Bolin's ex-wife. This revelation would lead to the unraveling of Bolin's dark secrets and the eventual end to his reign of terror. Witnesses, including Bolin's half-brother and cousin, came forward to testify against him, providing damning evidence that would ultimately seal his fate. Bolin was found guilty and sentenced to death for the murders of Natalie Blanche Hawley, Stephanie Collins, and Terry Lynn Matthews. Bolin, however, had maintained his innocence ever since.
The state's about to kill me, and they think they're getting justice, and I'm like, well, I'm not getting justice. They're just going to kill somebody else.
He continues by saying the state of Florida was murdering an innocent man.
I've been hearing you talk for the last 20 minutes, and you're going over the case, you're going over the evidence, and talking about it being flawed and tainted and planted. So is Florida basically killing an innocent man?
Yes.
However, Bolin stated that his execution, however, would be a release from his punishment. As the nation watched, Bolin's life came to an end on January 7, 2016, when he was executed by lethal injection. Arthur Shawcross.
Do you have any comprehension of the suffering that you've brought the families of the people that you killed?
I don't have any remorse.
Arthur John Shawcross was born in Kittery, Maine, the first of 4 children of Arthur Roy Shawcross and Elizabeth Bessie Urakis Shawcross. He claimed that while growing up, his mother performed oral sex on him for several years, starting from when he was just 7. He also claimed that while in junior high school, he had sexual relations with his sister. Although his family denied these claims, Shawcross insisted it happened. Whatever the case, it was clear Shawcross was a troubled individual who was heading for a dark turn.
Do you know what evil is?
Sure.
Are you evil?
Somewhat.
On May 7th, 1972, Shawcross sexually assaulted and murdered his first known victim, 10-year-old Jack Owen Blake. In September of the same year, he murdered his second victim, 8-year-old Karen Ann Hill, after sexually assaulting her as well. He was immediately arrested the next day, but as part of a plea bargain, he spent only 14 years in prison. Shawcross was released in April 1987, and in 1988, he went on a killing spree, brutally murdering 11 people, most of them prostitutes. He was eventually arrested in 1990 and was sentenced to 250 years in prison. Even while incarcerated, Shawcross showed no form of remorse for the chilling crimes he committed. He even described how he gruesomely split one of his victims open without betraying any emotion. The interview ended with Shawcross stating that he didn't want to hurt anyone anymore.
There's always a bad man in me. You never can get rid of it. He's behind a door somewhere. I'm trying to keep him there. I don't want to hurt nobody else.
Really?
Really.
However, one thing that stood out was how Shawcross abruptly ended the interview when the case of the 2 children he murdered was brought up. He eventually died in prison on November 10th, 2008, the reason behind his evasion of the question, dead with him. As we conclude our exploration into the disturbing interviews with serial killers, we get a chilling glimpse into the mind of a serial killer, a reminder that evil can lurk behind the most ordinary facades. For more intriguing videos like this, click on the cards showing on your screen and I'll be waiting.
Do you remember killing her?
Yeah, possibly. We're not going into details here.
No, but how did you kill her?
Probably strangulation.
How do you know when they're dead?
No. I don't know, just do.
Do you ever feel violent?
Yes, I do.
What do you feel like doing?
Killing people.
You still feel like killing people?
Yes.
Describe the feeling that you get when you feel like killing people.
Well, last March 11th, I was hallucinating, and I took a razor blade and I cut a man's throat.
Here in the hospital?
Here in the hospital.
Do you think you'd murder me, Joe?
Yes.
That's gruesome, Joe. That's horrible.
Yes, it is.
And you don't blame me if I say I hope you never get out of this place.
I hope I never do either.
25th November 1988, a high school girl named Junko Furuta was heading back to her home from her part-time job. She was riding on her bicycle and was returning to her home on the same route she followed every day. While on her bicycle, suddenly a boy similar to her age comes to her, kicks her bicycle and runs off. Junko fell from her bicycle, and while she was getting up, another boy with the name Hiroshi Miyano also happened to be there at the time. He came to offer her help to walk her home safely. Junko knew him from her high school. He went to the same school as her. Junko took the help and let Miyano walk her to her home. Along the way, they both started chatting with each other, and soon, while walking, Junko didn't notice that Miyano was actually leading her to a nearby abandoned warehouse. Just as they reached the warehouse, he revealed his connections with the Yakuza and threatened her that he will kill her if she tried to escape, and with that, he began to rape her in that warehouse. Junko was trapped with him, and from there started the most gruesome crime to ever happen to a girl. ties with the Yakuza, Miyano raped Junko while threatening to kill her right in the warehouse. Then, from there, he took her to a hotel nearby and continued to rape to her yet once again. Junko was helpless in front of him and was following everything he was demanding from her. From the hotel, Miyano called all of his friends, Minato, Joe Ogura, Yasushi Watanabe, to brag about the rape. He bragged to them about the rape he just did with Junko, as he already had a crush on her from a long time from school. Over the phone, Ogura asked Miyano to keep Junko in captivity so that they too could rape her. He told him that they should keep her so that she could be raped and sexually assaulted by numerous other Yakuza members. The group actually had a history of gang rape, and they had also kept another girl in captivity before her, who was released. However, Junko was not that fortunate. At around 3 a.m., Miyano took Junko to a park where Minato, Ogura, and Watanabe were waiting for both of them. They told her that they had gotten her address from one of her notebooks in her backpack, and that if she tried to escape from them, then they will send the Yakuza members to kill everyone in her family, her parents and both of her brothers. Then they took her to a house in the Ayase district of Adachi. It was owned by Minato's parents, and it was sort of their regular gang hangout. Upon reaching the house, Junko was gang raped by all of them. On November 27, Junko's parents were quite worried of their daughter being missing for 2 days, and so they contacted the police about their daughter's disappearance. The police acted upon the complaint and began to search for their missing daughter. The boys were quite worried by this. They were afraid that if the police continued the search for Junko, then they will be caught and all of their crimes would come to surface. So, in order to discourage further investigation, they forced her into calling her own mother. She was forced to say that she had run away by herself, but was safe and staying at some friend's house. They also forced her to ask her parents to stop any further police investigation, as she had run away by herself and was completely safe. Junko was kept at Minato residence during the whole torture, and when Minato's parents were present, she was forced to act as his girlfriend to eliminate any possible doubt by his parents. However, they later dropped this drama from his parents when it became clear to them that Minato's parents would not report them to the police. In later investigations, Minato's parents stated that they did not intervene in their child's activities with Junko because they were very aware of Miyano's Yakuza connections and feared that if they intervened in the boys' business, then the Yakuza members might attack on them or hurt them. Their own son Minato too was increasingly violent towards them. His brother was also aware of this situation and the rape that were happening with Junko, but did nothing to prevent it. The total time during which Junko was kept in the Minato residence was for 40 days. She was raped, abused, and tortured. The boys also invited other Yakuza members who were their friends to come and rape Junko, during which many of them tortured and beat her. It is believed that more than 100 men had raped Junko. They repeatedly raped and tortured her in various ways. Later, the boys confessed that just the 4 of them had raped her more than 400 times. They also confessed that they regularly beat her, starved her, hung her from the ceiling to use her as a punching bag. They also dropped barbells onto her stomach and forced her to eat live cockroaches. She was also forced to drink her own urine and masturbate in front of them. they also forced her to dance and sing to songs while being beaten by them. They also reportedly inserted many objects into her vagina, rectum, and anus. Furthermore, they also inserted a lit light bulb and fireworks into herself. They confessed that they burned her vagina and clitoris with cigarettes and lighters and her eyelids with hot wax. They also tore off her left nipple with pliers and pierced her breast with sewing needles. And of course, after all of this torture, Junko was reported to have slipped into unconsciousness because of these repeated assaults, which in turn led the boys to drown her head into a bucket of water each time to continue their torture. Some accomplices have been officially identified, including Tetsuo Nakamura and Koichi Ihara, who were charged with rape after their DNA was found on and inside the Junko's body. Ihara have been reported to be allegedly bullied into raping Junko, and after he left the Minato household, he told his brother about the incident. His brother subsequently told their parents, who then contacted the police, and as a result of this, 2 police officers were sent to the Minato residence. However, they were informed by the boys that there were no girls inside the house. The police officers declined the invitation to come and look inside the house, believing that the invitation alone was sufficient proof that there was nothing to be found inside the house. Later, both police officers faced a backlash from the community and were fired for failing to follow the procedure. If they had searched the house that day, they would have saved Junko from the hell-like treatment she was going through, and all of this case would have lasted only for 16 days. It would also have been much easier and possible for Junko to recover from her injuries if she was saved that day. Another attempt was made to reach the police in the beginning of December. Junko herself had attempted to call the police. She was, however, discovered by Miyano before she could say anything. When the police called back, Miyano told them that the original call was just a mistake and told them to not worry about it. Junko, as a punishment for trying to call the police, the boys tossed her legs and feet in lighter fuel and set them on fire. They also pushed a large bottle into her anus, causing a severe internal bleeding. She reportedly went into convulsions. Later, the boys confessed that they thought that she was faking the seizure, so they set her on fire once again. Unfortunately, she survived these injuries and got continued to be raped and tortured. They also confessed that Junko had asked them many times to just kill her and get it over with, but they refused to do so. Instead, they punished her for asking something like this. They forced her to sleep outside on the balcony during winter time and locked her in a freezer. One of the boys told the court that her hands and legs were so badly damaged that it took her over an hour to drag herself downstairs to go to the washroom. Due to the severity of the torture, she eventually lost her bladder and bowel control and was subsequently beaten for urinating on the floor. She was also unable to drink water or consume food and would vomit after each attempt, for which she received further beatings from the boys. The brutal attacks from the boys drastically altered Junko's appearance. Her face was so swollen that it was difficult to make out her features. Her body was also severely crippled, giving off a rotting smell that caused the 4 boys to lose any sexual interest in her. And as a result, the boys kidnapped another 19-year-old woman who, like Junko, was on her way home from work. She was also gang raped by the boys. On January 4, 1989, Hiroshi Miyano lost a game of mahjong, after which he decided to vent his anger on Junko. At this point, however, Junko was barely even alive. and because of this, the boys got frustrated and beat her with an iron barbell, kicked and punched her, and placed 2 short candles on her eyelids, resulting in them burning from the hot wax. They then made her stand and struck her feet with a stick. At this, she fell into a stereo unit and collapsed into a fit of convulsions. Since she was already bleeding profusely and pus was emerging from her earlier infected burns, the 4 boys covered their hands in plastic bags so that her pus wouldn't get on their hands. They then continued to beat her once again and dropped an iron exercise ball onto her stomach several times. They poured lighter fuel onto her thighs, arms, face, and stomach, and once again set her on fire. Junko tried her best to put out the fire, but eventually became unresponsive. The attack was said to have lasted for about 2 hours. On that day, Junko finally succumbed to her wounds and died. A few hours after Junko's death, Nobuharu Minato's brother called him to tell him that Junko appeared to be dead to him. The boys, being afraid of getting locked up for murder, wrapped her body in several blankets and shoved her into a travel bag. They then put her body in a 208-liter drum and filled it with wet concrete. At around 8 p.m., they loaded the drum and eventually disposed of the drum into a cement truck in Koto, Tokyo. On January 23, 1989, Hiroshi Miyano and Joe Ogura were arrested for the gang rape of the 19-year-old woman who they had kidnapped in December. On March 29, 2 police officers came to interrogate them, as women's underwear had been found at their addresses. During the interrogation, one of the officers led Miyano into believing that police were aware of a murder committed by Miyano. Thinking that Joe Ogura probably confessed to the crimes done against Junko, Miyano told the police where to find Junko's body. The police were originally confused by the confession, as they had been referring to the murder of a different woman and her 7-year-old son that had occurred 9 days prior to Junko's abduction. That case, by the way, remains unsolved to this day. The police found the drum containing Junko's body the following day. She was identified via her fingerprints. When Junko's body was found, Oronamin C bottles had been inserted into her anus. Her face was unrecognizable, and she had become pregnant from the repeated rapes. Despite the shocking brutality of their crime, the identities of the boys were sealed by the code, as they were all considered to be juveniles at the time of the crime. Journalists from the Shukan Bunshun magazine discovered their identities, however, and published them. They stated that given the severity of the crime, the accused did not deserve to have their right to anonymity upheld. Rather than murder, all 4 boys pled guilty to committing bodily injury that resulted in death. In July 1990, a lower court sentenced Hiroshi Miyano, the alleged leader of the crime, to 17 years in prison. He appealed his sentence, but Tokyo High Court Judge Ryuji Yanase sentenced him to an additional 3 years in prison. The 20-year sentence is the second highest sentence given in Japan before life imprisonment. He was 18 at the time of the murder. Miyano's mother reportedly sent Junko's parents 50 million yen after selling their family house. Miyano was denied parole in 2004. In January 2013, Miyano was rearrested for fraud. Due to insufficient evidence, he was released without charge later that month. Nobuharu Minato, who originally received a 4 to 6 year sentence, was resentenced to 5 to 9 years by Judge Ryuji Yanase upon appeal. He was 16 at the time of the murder. Minato's parents and brother were not charged. After his release, Minato moved in with his mother. In 2018, Minato was arrested again for attempting murder after beating a 32-year-old man with a metal rod and slashing his throat with a knife. Yasushi Watanabe, who was originally sentenced to 3 to 4 years in prison, received an upgraded sentence of 5 to 7 years. He was 17 at the time of the murder. For his role in the crime, Joe Ogura served 8 years in a juvenile prison before he was released in August 1999. He was 17 at the time of the murder. After his release, he is said to have boasted about his role in the kidnapping, rape, and torture of Junko. Ogura's mother allegedly vandalized Junko's grave, stating that she had ruined her son's life. It also had been reported that Ogura had depleted his father's savings, money which was intended to be provided as a restitution to Junko's family, buying and consuming a number of luxury goods. These sentences were largely regarded as being far too light for the crimes committed, and all 4 individuals were protected by special provisions applied to individuals 18 years old and younger. Junko Furuta's funeral was held on 2nd of April 1989. Junko's intended future employer presented her parents with the uniform she would have worn in the position she had accepted. The uniform was placed in her casket. At her graduation, Junko's school principal presented her with a high school diploma, which was given to her parents. The location near where Junko's body was discovered has been developed since and is now Divakasu Park.